The book of Proverbs presents us with a simplified version of the way we encounter life. As we go throughout life and experience all of the complexities, the book of Proverbs is really trying to just boil it all down for us. It's really just a choice between life and death. It's a choice between good and evil. It's a choice between wisdom and folly. What the Father has done is, through a series of 10 lessons, he has helped his Son begin to experience what he might encounter in life. He's helped him walk down these paths and anticipate the encounters he's going to have along the road of life. And the Father is trying to help the Son picture what life might be like as he lives it. But really, at its heart, it's just a choice between wisdom and folly. The Father is trying to help the Son see, no matter how complex my life might be, it really is just a choice for you between wisdom and folly. Will you choose the way of wisdom, or will you choose the way of folly? The choice, it seems, is up to us. In this final video, what we're looking at is Proverbs chapter 9. And here, I think the Father tries to summarize for his Son really all of what he's been saying in these first 8 chapters all together. Remember, we walked one by one through each of these lessons, but they were interspersed with lots of these interludes or asides where the Father would talk about wisdom. We didn't really talk about those or cover those in these sessions. We've just been looking at the individual lessons that the Father had for his Son. But now we get to Proverbs chapter 9, and it seems that he's trying to summarize for his Son or encapsulate for his Son all of the messages that he has been trying to communicate up to this point. And he does that through communicating 2 banquets. The idea here is that as the Son will think about all of life, that perhaps he can envision these banquets that are being laid. And because this really does seem to be sort of the final summary or the final point, the Father is really making it as explicit as he can. And so the characters that we meet on this road, on this journey, in this chapter, are really the 2 main characters that we've really had all along. The first character we meet is Lady Wisdom. But then we also meet her opposite, which is Lady Folly. With these closing arguments, then, the Father begins to make his final appeal to his Son. Will you choose to listen to the way of wisdom? Let's watch as the Father begins to paint a picture for us of what this is like. Proverbs chapter 9, starting in verse 1. Wisdom has built her house. Now, perhaps this sounds a little bit strange to us, that wisdom is building a house. Wisdom is sort of this idea or a concept. How can an idea or a concept build something? But really, I think what's happening is the Father is playing off of the Hebrew language and the way that it works. In the Hebrew language, words like this are either masculine or feminine. In fact, every single noun in Hebrew is either masculine or feminine. You just have to make a choice. Now, it's not always something that is clearly masculine or clearly feminine, right? The word for man is masculine. The word for woman is feminine. That's unsurprising to us. But there are other words that are a little bit surprising. The word for land is feminine. The word for sword is feminine. Some of these words we wouldn't expect to be this way, but it just is the way that it is. The word for bread is masculine. One of the realities, though, of this is that as you begin to talk about things, doing things, you have to make a choice about what gender the thing that you're talking about is. For instance, if I want to say the bread did something, I would have to, as I included that verb for whatever the bread did, I would have to make a choice about whether I was going to use a masculine verb or a feminine verb. If I'm talking about bread, then I'm going to choose a masculine verb because bread is masculine in form. Now, all of this matters because when we begin to talk about something like wisdom, we actually then begin to use feminine verbs to do it. Because of this, wisdom is easily personified, it seems, as a lady, as this woman who's going about doing things. In other words, as I talk about wisdom doing this or being like this, I have to say she does it. She does this. She does this. She does this. Because of that, it creates this conceptual world, I think, that the Father is wanting to play with for us here in the book of Proverbs. And here he's picturing wisdom as this woman. And so, since we have this woman that he's holding up for us, we're going to call her Lady Wisdom. She has built her house. She has constructed it. She has carved out her 7 pillars. Normal houses in those days would have 3 pillars, but hers has 7, the perfect, complete, full number of pillars. And there in her house, she has prepared her meat. She has mixed her wine. She also has set her table. Notice what's happening here. This woman, this Lady Wisdom personified, she is preparing this feast, this banquet that she's laying out for others. And then, verse 3, she sent out her female servants, and she calls out from the highest point of the city. In other words, she's choosing to invite people to a feast, to this decadent banquet that she has prepared all on her own. I don't know if you have a memory of a time that you have enjoyed an incredible feast. Maybe it was a special holiday meal together with friends and family. Maybe it was a fancy meal you had out just with someone who was significant in your life. But one of these moments when you stepped into a space where the space had been prepared, the table had been set, the food was exquisite, and it had been worked on for a long time. Someone had prepared specifically for your arrival. And sitting down to a feast like that really does feel like a gift. It feels like a treat. It feels like a special thing that is being given to us. This, it seems, is what wisdom is offering. It says that the servants go all throughout the city, and they call out from the highest points of the city, "Whoever is inexperienced, enter here. To the one who lacks sense." These are all of the people that we have encountered elsewhere in the book. She calls to those who are simple, like the young man in Proverbs chapter 7, to the one who is lacking in heart, also like the young man in Proverbs chapter 7. These are individuals who have perhaps started along their journey but are not quite wise enough. Those who have started along their way but have not yet made a decision. Maybe they've even entered into the city, but they haven't made up their mind yet on which path they're going to take. And wisdom says, "Come in, come and join me. Come," she says, verse 5, "eat my bread, drink the wine I have mixed. I'll let you eat my food. Just come to this feast that I have prepared. It's the best food in the best company. I've got it all ready for you." Verse 6, "Leave inexperience behind, and you will live." This is a choice. Again, an invitation to life. Come and leave your inexperience behind you. Choose to step into the life and the experience that I am giving you now. It's an invitation to the fullness of life. Pursue the way of understanding. And then we get to verse 7. What follows in these next several verses are sort of advanced instructions for wisdom's guests. If you will choose to come in and join wisdom's banquet, if you will let yourself be seated at her table, you will receive instruction from Lady Wisdom, and it will change your life. She begins to give some of her instruction here. She says, "The one who corrects a mocker will bring abuse on himself. The one who rebukes the wicked will get hurt." In other words, there's little good in correcting a scoffer. Don't rebuke a mocker or he will hate you. But then she turns to the other side. Rebuke the wise, and he will love you. Instruct the wise, and he will be wiser still. Teach the righteous, and he will learn more. I wonder if what wisdom is essentially saying here is that those who are choosing the way of wisdom are those who are open to instruction. I think there's a couple of things for us here. Number one, I think this is an invitation to those who choose to come and sit at wisdom's table. Which category would you put yourself in? As wisdom begins to dispense her instruction and deliver her teaching to those who are gathered together, who are sitting at her table, what will their response be? Perhaps, in a way, this is sort of an invitation to lean in, an invitation to say, well, I don't want to be a scoffer. I don't want to be an unwise person. So I'm going to choose to receive the correction with an attitude of openness. I'm going to hear what she says and actually try to internalize it in my life. But I think there's another piece here for us. I think it's a helpful test for us of whether or not we're open to wisdom. How do we handle input or criticism? Perhaps think back on a time in the last week or month or several months when someone has corrected you or someone has told you something perhaps that you didn't want to hear about your performance or about your attitude or about your behavior. How did you take the input or correction from somebody else? Were you willing to listen, or were you resistant? Were you angry perhaps that they were so willing to correct you? Now, granted, there is a way to correct people, but I do think it's a helpful test for us to ask ourselves, are we people who are humble enough to receive correction? Remember what it says at the beginning of Proverbs, that these words are written to correct not just those who need it, but even the wise themselves. If we are willing to submit ourselves to the wisdom of these words, the wisdom of the Father for the Son in the book of Proverbs, we will find that we are becoming wiser and wiser all of the time. The way to avoid wisdom, of course, is to harden our hearts and to turn a deaf ear to whatever wisdom might want to say to us. And so I think there's an invitation from wisdom here to learn and to keep learning, to stay humble in order that we might keep our ears open. She goes on, verse 10. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. Notice, once again, just like Proverbs chapter 1, wisdom or the fear of the Lord is the starting point. It is not the end. And this will orient you properly to the rest of life. Verse 11, for by me your days will be many, and years will be added to your life. If you are wise for your own benefit. If you mock, you alone will bear the consequences. And so the Father, I think, wisdom here perhaps, is encouraging us to enter into this path of wisdom. We begin with the fear of the Lord, and that fear of the Lord starts us on this cycle of continually learning. Here's what William Brown says. A defining character trait of the wise is the capacity to receive correction with a sense of appreciative collegiality. And I think that's so true, right? One of the characteristics of those who are wise is a willingness to hear, a willingness to listen. This is what it's like to eat with wisdom. This is what it's like to enjoy wisdom's banquet that she has prepared for us. But before we move on to the next section, we're reminded of another banquet. There's not just one, there are actually two. And so, verse 13, folly is a rowdy woman. She is gullible and knows nothing. Again, playing on this idea of feminine words, we're now picturing Lady Folly. She's here for all of us to see, and she's the worst. She's loud, she's clueless. In many ways, she sounds a lot, acts a lot like some of the women we've met so far in the book of Proverbs, which I think perhaps is an interpretive clue for us that what we're getting are caricatures of who these people might be, right? They represent folly in bodily form. Verse 14, she sits by the doorway of her house on a seat at the highest point of the city. Notice she's in similar places to Lady Wisdom, in her house or at the highest points of the city, but she's just sitting there. She has nothing prepared. She hasn't been working away, slaving away in the kitchen to make a wonderful meal for her guests. No, she's got nothing, really. She's not been working at anything or slaving over anything. She's just there. And then she sits on these highest points of the city, and she calls out, verse 15, to those who pass by, who go straight ahead on their paths. Notice they're going straight, and she's trying to get them away from that straight path. She says, verse 16, whoever is inexperienced, enter here. To the one who lacks sense, she says. Again, it's almost the same thing that wisdom is saying to the people who are on their path. To those who lack sense, she's speaking all of these things, but her message is so different, could not be more different than that of Lady Wisdom. She says, stolen water is sweet, and bread eaten secretly is tasty. There is seduction in stolen goods, but the joy, the enjoyment, it does not last. We remember that well was a way of talking earlier in the book of Proverbs about the sexual relationships that you have with your own wife. And so it seems that stolen water must come from someone else's well. And this could be, I think, a sexual illusion. Oh, it's sweet. Oh, it'll be good for you. But the reality is it's not. Bread eaten secretly is tasty, she says, but again, it's stolen. She doesn't have anything there that she's prepared for herself. She's just gone and grabbed it from somebody else. In verse 18, he doesn't know that the departed spirits are there, that her guests are in the depths of Sheol. Yes, folly does have a banquet that she has laid out, but your guests there waiting with you are those that are already in Sheol. In Isaiah 14, verse 9, there's this sobering picture of this king who has died. And it says, all of the kings of the earth, the shades, they rise up to greet him. And they say, oh, we've been waiting for you. We've been hoping that you would come and join us. Come, why don't you stay here with us? And we've made you a nice bed of maggots. We've got a nice blanket of worms to cover you. That's like folly's guests. Those people, those kings of the earth, the shades in Isaiah 14, these are the people who sit at folly's table. So the question for us, is that the kind of banquet you would like to enjoy? Do you want to enjoy death alongside of all of these other people? We remember the uncovering that the Father tried to do in Proverbs chapter 1, clearing the net so that we might be able to see it. I think that's what the Father is doing here. Maybe you think folly's banquet sounds nice. You think stolen water does sound sweet, and perhaps bread eaten in secret is tasty. Perhaps you have a desire to do that, but do you really have a desire to head on the way to death? That's what the Father is saying to us. And with these words, I think we are left with a challenge. What will we choose? Will we internalize the messages that the Father has given to us? And I think the message is just this. It may look like a complex world out there, but really it is just a choice between life and death. Will we choose to submit ourselves to wisdom consistently, regularly? Will we submit to wisdom and listen to her voice? Or will we choose to listen to folly, to submit ourselves to whatever folly might want to say, to eat at her table and enjoy her delicacies? If we do, we will find ourselves on the road to death. With these words, Proverbs chapter 9 ends, and in Proverbs chapter 10, verse 1, it says, the Proverbs of Solomon. What follow are 375 short maxims, words that give us information about all of the different paths of life that we might take, wisdom for all of life's complexity. You know, in Hebrew, there were no numbers. The numbers were actually the same as the letters of the alphabet. What this means is that every word or every name had a numerical value to it. And the numerical value of the name of Solomon is 375. That's the same number of short maxims we have between Proverbs 10:1 and 22:16. I don't think that's a coincidence. I think Solomon was really trying to give us wisdom, sort of this full picture of wisdom. But in order to receive it, I think Solomon would say, you need to understand these first 9 chapters. In order to internalize the message of wisdom, you have to hear the voice of the Father to the sons, as it occurs in these 10 lessons, this summary, this conclusion that we get here at the end in Proverbs chapter 9. These chapters, they give you a framework to hear it. And so, for those who have ears to hear, we recognize that this book has wisdom to offer us. We will encounter difficulties in life. We will encounter all sorts of challenges and bumps along the way. But if we're willing to listen to the voice of the Father, if we're willing to listen to the voice of Solomon that comes to us time and time again throughout the book of Proverbs, it's almost like we're taking a different set of glasses and we're putting them on our face. We're beginning to see all of life and all of reality, not just through our own eyes or through the eyes of folly, but really through the wisdom way of life. The choice really remains up to us. How will we choose to live? Will we choose folly or will we choose wisdom? I think Solomon would say, along with Jesus, choose life.